Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to this month's episode where we are going to be discussing the Austin market. For those who haven't joined us before, I am Amy Davis, Managing Director of PGC Group. We specialise in supporting recruiters expand to the US and also in providing employer of record services for their contractors and clients. Today, joining me are two very special guests, and I'm very excited to introduce them. Both of them are from Cushman and Wakefield, who need no introduction. So first, we have the Executive Managing Director, Keith Zimmerman, and Senior Associate, Chris Peddie. Together, they've been working in the Austin market for over 42 years, and between them have seen the market change and grow rapidly, particularly, I'd say, in the last 5 years, where the Austin skyline seems to have changed with each passing month as the city develops further. I'm always amazed every time I fly into Austin how it looks a little bit different to the last time I was there, because there's so much development taking place. So with Chris and Keith's experience combined, it makes them both a leading voice on the Austin market. So hello, Chris and Keith.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Yes, it is my afternoon. It looks like it's your evening, but I appreciate it's actually just very early in the morning for you both. Is that right?
Yes, good morning.
Yeah. Are we going to see a nice sunrise? Are we going to see a nice sunrise behind you guys over the next 30 minutes?
We could. We're heading west, so you may not see the sun, but you'll start seeing the towers probably soon.
Okay, nice. We were actually just laughing before we went live because the guys told me that there's construction happening around them. They were a little bit worried about the noise, and I made a joke that obviously that just proves the point around how much development's going on in Austin if we can actually hear it whilst we're talking about it. But thank you so much for joining me today. We've got a lot to get through in just 30 minutes. We've got a jam-packed agenda. And what we're going to cover is really look at the historic growth of Austin, what that's looked like, look at what the thriving industries are there right now, and also what are we seeing in terms of future trends in this city. Now, for anyone who's watching live or listening, you can ask some questions and we'll hopefully answer those in today's session. So as always, please just drop them in the chat function and we're going to do our very best to answer as many as we can without distracting from the agenda set before us. If we don't get time to answer your questions, we'll make sure we do come back to you personally after the episode is finished. Now, it would just be really great to know for those that are listening live, if you're already in Austin, let us know in the comments, or equally, if you are thinking about Austin as a location to base your office or potentially to build business from there, then pop that in the comments too. So we're going to jump in whilst you guys go in the comments. So when we look at Austin, we know that it's one of the most talked about cities for business in the US right now, and it's contributing huge growth to the state of Texas as a whole. And indeed, Texas has been in the headlines this past year for all the right reasons when it comes to staffing. So firstly, we know it's the second largest state for generating staffing revenue. Actually overtook New York last year, which fell to third place. And it also overtook New York in the race for having the most Fortune 500 companies headquartered there. So New York's taken quite a hammering post-COVID from Texas. And when it comes to contract recruitment, Texas also appears in the top 3 states for talent, particularly we've seen in the tech sector. So it's going to be great to add some colour to these headlines today. And Keith, obviously we've been able to see this growth and shift, particularly we know it started to spike post-COVID, but it'd be great to pick your brains a little bit more about the historic growth and background to Austin and why it's seen such exponential growth.
Thanks, Amy. In the 45 years living here in Austin, I've seen not just explosive growth today, but over the last large number of years. If you look back historically, Austin has doubled basically every 20 years. So just in the time period I've been here, Austin has quadrupled in population as well as employment. If you look over the last 20 years, Austin's been the fastest growing city in the country from a growth rate standpoint. So that trend is continuing, certainly. It's historically been a number of industries that have allowed it to grow, really starting from when I came here, being a very heavy kind of government population, being
Mm-hmm.
capital of the second largest state. And that's evolved as tech has gotten more and more substantial in this town.
Yeah.
To the point where at this point, since COVID, if you look at it, since April of 21, we replaced all of the jobs we had lost during COVID. And the U.S. Department of Labor Statistics has shown that since COVID, since February of 20, Austin's been the fastest growing city in the country of the 50 largest metro cities, according to their statistics.
Wow. And what is it, Keith, that's driving that growth?
What's driving it in a broad sense is labor. People are in quality of life. People are trying to, especially since COVID, really even before that, but it accelerated during COVID. People are realizing they can live anywhere they want, so they're picking the quality of life that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And employers recognize that the most important thing for their company is the labor force. And so even though a lot of it is remote, that has accelerated the trend we saw during COVID. Tremendous in-migration, largely from California and Texas, some to the East Coast. But certainly all statistics would show that Texas and Florida had a enormous in-migration. And Austin, fortunately, has been the beneficiary of that kind of growth.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. We've seen that in the data as well. Florida and Texas kind of overtaking the more traditional popular states, and definitely lifestyle, personal income, things like that have definitely contributed to that. And obviously you guys get a lot of sunshine, as I've experienced, a lot of hot heat as well, as I've experienced many times there. I'm sure that's attracting people too.
It is. Over the years, people have come for South by Southwest. They come in March, see beautiful sunny weather when many of them are coming from snow or shoveling it for long enough that they're like, why are we living where we are?
Yeah.
You mentioned New York, Amy. People come from New York and Chicago and Seattle during our spring and summer months, and sometimes they never leave. So
yeah, definitely. I can totally see that. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Okay, Keith, would you mind just talking to us a little bit about what industries are thriving right now, and maybe just give us any sort of trends in data, or any type of companies, particular talent that's moving into the city would be really great to hear.
Absolutely. What we're seeing is that there's a clustering that's occurring, that has occurred in Austin over the years and is accelerating. Some of the key industries, the creative and digital industry is accelerating in this town, certainly highlighted by companies like Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Oracle, many others. The second main area is the semiconductor area. It's also becoming quite a bit of hub for the semiconductor, has for years, and that's accelerating, especially with the CHIPS Act. Just as an example, in the semiconductor area, we've got a $17 billion fab. It's the largest U.S. investment. And Samsung is creating a massive fab. It's their North American headquarters, and they've got approvals for another 10 fabs just like it. We've got a couple of other fabs under construction, as well as a large number of the main semiconductors. The Applied Materials, which is the largest equipment manufacturer, they're doing a massive expansion. Tokyo Electron, which is the second largest company, they are equipment manufacturer, they're also doing an expansion. AMD, sort of the de facto U.S. headquarters, their executive management's here. So semiconductors certainly accelerating. Software, as I mentioned, is accelerating. The third main area is financial services. Companies like PIMCO, coming from the East Coast with a major fund, dimensional funding, which came from the West Coast, Schwab. Another big area is clean tech. is coming in here in a significant way. It's being listed as one of the main areas. Automotive is a new industry that's come in heavy with GM already, their innovation center already being here. And obviously Tesla's major announcement is probably the largest thing that's occurred within the last few years. Over 5 million square feet, couple thousand acres. Elon Musk has essentially moved his headquarters, not only of Tesla, but SpaceX, his boring companies, all of which are experiencing phenomenal growth. We've also are seeing the space industry coming in here significantly, companies like Firefly, but also now SpaceX with Elon coming in here. Austin fortunately won the Army Futures Command, which is the fourth main service for the military. Massive spending, directs a massive spending budget. So once they came in, you started to see the military complex coming to Austin. BAE being the best example of a company coming here that does a lot with the Army. Certainly advanced manufacturing, we're seeing a massive increase in manufacturing coming into this town, which is just a whole nother diversification. And then we've always had kind of regional and headquarters. Certainly probably the three most noticeable ones would be Dell's world headquarters is here. Indeed, they're here is their headquarters, and then Whole Foods, but certainly lots of others. So that gives, I guess, a flavor. There's certainly other industries. Call center industry is big here because of our central time zone and our quality labor force. So lots more information there, but just at a high level, those are some of the industries and some of the companies.
It's fascinating actually, because I think a lot of people associate Austin with tech, but also oil and gas as well. So just to kind of hear some of a lot more industries that are moving in, and even some of the kind of the size of the spaces these companies are taking up. I'm always like, it just blows my mind, the actual size, like geographically, of Austin and the space there is to expand there. So you definitely showed that in that last answer, particularly with Tesla's space that they're going to be taking up.
It is. Some of the players have come in a substantial way. Facebook, it's their second largest presence. Apple, it's their U.S. headquarters. So other than they're at headquarters, this is their largest presence. They've done a massive increase. I mentioned the Tesla facility. It's probably quadruple anything else that they've got in terms of land and future expansion. So you're seeing some of the largest companies, Amazon's come in here in a gigantic way. You're seeing all of those kind of tech companies coming in here, and then lots of small kind of startups with the VC activity that we have.
Brilliant. And do you have anything, Jamie Porter, who's with us at the minute, do you have anything on the construction industry and what that's looking like right now in Austin? Construction
industry is staying strong, partly because of the pipeline that is already developed. A lot. I mean, if the lights, if it was brighter, you would see a lot of cranes are downtown. I think has 40 projects underway at this point, which is incredible. But we have a lot of construction still going on in this town, even though certainly real estate in general has slowed down all over the country. But we're still seeing quite a bit. We also have a lot of public sector work that is coming in a big way. We've passed over $1 billion bond package for our metro to create a transit system in both the city, the county, and the state. And then with federal money, we're getting, billions of dollars of construction activity happening in the public sector, in the schools.
Brilliant. Jamie's probably going to reach out to you right after this and find out all about those projects, no doubt. Chris, if you wouldn't mind, it'd be great just to hear, why are all of these companies moving into Texas? and not only the companies, but also the talent. We touched on it very briefly earlier, but if you could just add a bit more color to that as well, that would be great.
It's a great question, Amy, and one we get all the time from clients that are looking to either expand into Austin or potentially relocate their headquarters here. And you touched on it, and there is a direct relationship between why these businesses are moving to Austin and why the talent is moving to Austin. And certainly from the business perspective, there is a lot of corporate benefits. Texas, for example, there's no state income tax, which is obviously attractive both on the individual and on the business. From the corporate tax perspective, it's a very friendly tax environment. We have low corporate taxes, favorable regulation. Texas in general does have pretty decent tax incentives programs. Austin is a little bit more difficult to achieve those, Austin proper, unless it's a pretty large project. That said, where we are seeing a large amount of growth is in the surrounding suburbs of Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown, Cedar Park, Leander, for example. Those municipalities have attractive incentives programs that we work with them directly to help some clients that we work with coming in from California, for example, or other states to achieve some attractive incentives. But like I said, the companies are really, and Keith touched on it a little bit earlier, they're one of their most important objectives is achieving strong talent. And so why are people moving to Austin? Generally speaking, in terms of the country, there is a rather low cost of living. You've probably read recently somewhere that Austin's real estate and housing prices is getting expensive. But in the scheme of things, when you think about some primary markets in the U.S., we are still below those California markets in New York City. And actually, we have seen a bit of a slowdown, if you will, in sort of this meteoric rise in housing prices and apartment rents, where things are beginning to stabilize in the residential area. Education, we have a fantastic education system in Austin, some very prestigious universities that are really connected to the city, the Chamber of Commerce, the major employers. As Keith touched on earlier, we obviously have a very vibrant, strong, and diverse economy. And so from a jobs perspective, there's a healthy amount of job opportunities still in Austin. And the people move here, really, a lot of that is the beautiful setting, the warm climate, as you mentioned, our culture. We have a vibrant food scene, music, art. South by Southwest was mentioned earlier, Austin city limits. And so there's a very strong population of young talent here.
Definitely. I know several times that I've been particularly a big fan of the food scene and how many amazing restaurants there are. And also, you didn't mention, Chris, which I thought you might, was the bats, which I'm a bit disappointed. I've been 4 times. I've stood on Congress Bridge waiting for the bats, and I'm yet to see them. So please tell me you've seen the bats and that they do exist.
Well, we'll have to make sure they do a command performance for you next time.
They do exist. It's the largest urban animal colony in the world, I believe, which is very interesting. You know, we've got a nickname, Bat City, sometimes, which I don't think gets used as much anymore these days, but it's true.
Apparently, for those who haven't been, Congress Bridge, one of the main bridges crossing the river in the city of Austin, there's apparently around 2 million bats under that bridge that come out at night, and it's a sight to behold, one I'm still yet to behold. So hopefully on my next trip, we will actually see them. I've got a question from Chris Bell. He's just asking, how receptive do you think Austin-based companies are to working with companies from the UK who are looking to establish themselves in the US?
I think they're very receptive. One of the areas that I haven't really touched on that is, I would say, a accelerating trend, certainly in the last 5 years, is the amount of the number and size of international companies that are beginning to come into Austin. You know, Austin has gone through a series of kind of large kind of events that sort of trigger Austin growing. Certainly one of those that made it so that it wasn't just a U.S. kind of phenomenon, but more global, was when we brought in F1. When F1 came here, the world, I think, started hearing more and more about Austin. But I find our city very receptive, very friendly, and for all kinds of industries, certainly from the UK. I would think people would find it, would welcome it.
Yeah. I laughed then because I was there for the F1 weekend. I don't think I've ever seen Austin so busy and seen so many celebrities in a short space of time. It's definitely a fun weekend. That's great. Thanks for answering that, Keith. Chris, what's going on in the space? Tell us a little bit about employment levels, the jobs market, and anything else that you think is relevant to share with everyone listening.
Sure. So Keith touched on it a little bit earlier, but want to reiterate that since April of 2021, Austin has been the number one top 50 metro in the U.S. post-pandemic for jobs growth. It's certainly a good statistic to reiterate. Just in last month, there was 70,000 job postings, and we have added about 58,000 jobs in the past year, with a growth rate of almost 5%. From an unemployment rate perspective, we are below the national average at 3.3%. Austin, just like any other market in the U.S., does have some of these very large occupiers that have experienced some layoffs recently. So, the beauty about Austin is, to Keith's point earlier, is we really do have a diverse amount of thriving industries that continue to add opportunities here, rather than be so reliant on one or two industries, such as big tech, for example, right now. Recruitment salaries, as a matter of fact, are pretty high, well above the national average, where a recruiter salary, the average is almost 70,000. So healthy numbers there. Yeah,
brilliant. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. In terms of, we speak to lots of clients about expanding to the States, and they will always ask me, what states should we look at? And we have popular states that, loads of people will go to, and then we have kind of up and coming states, for various reasons. Whenever I speak to clients about Texas, and in particular Austin, often a reservation that they will share with me is that, has it not reached its peak? Everyone seems to have been really talking about Austin the past few years. Are we too late? Are we behind the trend? And should we be looking at the next fastest growing city? What would, either of you or both of you, what would your answer be to that question or that objection?
For really a lot of the reasons we started with, I would absolutely say no. As somebody who's seen this city grow, if anything, I'm seeing it accelerate because of the clustering that we talked about. If somebody loses their job, they want to know, is there some other employer that I could potentially go to, whether it be a small company or a very large one? And so what I'm seeing is, certainly some companies in the tech sector nationally, globally, are going through some challenges right now. But overall, what we're seeing is that Austin's continuing to grow, and is projected to. So, whether it's first or second, there are plenty of different polls. One thing that is consistent is always Austin is up there in the top 5. And I don't see that going down. If anything, I see it, frankly, accelerating. Even the U.S. Conference of Mayors, their recent study suggested that now through 2027, Austin was ranked as the top city for future growth in a fairly recent study. So forgetting what Keith Zimmerman thinks, or Chris Peddie thinks, at least another source. And again, what I would tell you, Amy, is we could cite Forbes or Fortune or any number of cities that have ranked us for projected growth. I would say in general, is Austin slowing down, and is it too late? Absolutely not. If anything, we're seeing it grow quicker with a little bit of a blip, as every city's experiencing right now with this economy. But I see very positive things ahead.
I would certainly agree. You know, we have Austin has luckily been very forward thinking about things that could become, you know, roadblocks to us to have this continued growth. Some things that have come up is the housing market, like I mentioned previously, which we've seen that get under control. There's also a lot of development that has affordable housing components to sort of bring the affordability to a better level. Our transportation and transit system from an infrastructure perspective has a very high demand on it with all of this in-migration and population growth. And so Keith touched on this earlier, but we've passed a large bond package to add a light rail system throughout Austin to help with commuters. And so being forward thinking about how to grow the city responsibly and help keep things under control, I think is one thing that we've done very well.
Great.
You know, the one thing that we haven't really talked about that we would be remiss if we didn't is the University of Texas. UT has really been the anchor and the base that has always created the growth for Austin, and has always been what people wanted to be around. So you've got a university that's capped at roughly 50,000 students. The quality of that student is going consistently higher. So you've got one of the largest universities in the country, the second largest endowment, and over 20 programs that are in the top 5 in the country. And so, including our business school, our engineering school, computer science. So that has always been a driver. And when I talked about clusters, just as one example, UT finally was allowed to create a medical school. And so now National Science Foundation and others are suggesting that Austin's really one of the up and coming cities for life sciences and biotech. Certainly in the top 5 today, but with what UT is doing in that area is another kind of example of the importance that UT has to this.
No, that's really super interesting, particularly for anyone who's in the life sciences or biotech industries. Definitely looking at that is super interesting. Just as we draw to a close, you know, lots of businesses who move stateside, one of the things that they will grapple with is culturally how to do business in America. And we know that that can vary state by state in terms of the culture. So how you might do business in New York or California may be different from how you do it in Texas. Just hearing from you both in your time in Austin, have you got any tips for how to do business well in Austin for our listeners?
Well, it helps if you can learn how to say y'all.
Y'all, that is so true.
But past that, what you're going to find is the way Austin does business. It's a very, very friendly city, and so it's much more of a laid back, friendly. It's a very different kind of environment than if you're going to a New York City or even a California, or pick your city. It's you know it. I think you'll find it. People will find it to be a very welcoming, open city, very entrepreneurial, very startup focused, certainly very techy in certain areas. But you know, I think that people will be surprised. That the one other thing that, Amy, that a lot of people are surprised at is just how pretty Austin is. They have this image that we're in oil town, flat. And when they get to Austin, they see the lakes, the hills, and friendly people, and that's really helped create our growth.
It's an incredible city. I rave about it often, and it's been actually really great just to hear from you both today about how much opportunity there still is. Particularly Keith, I think you said, you know, it's absolutely not reached its peak. If anything, it's accelerating. So we're certainly not seeing the peak in sight anytime soon. Well, honestly, thank you so much. We really appreciate both of your contributions. I can't believe 30 minutes has already passed, but that is a wrap on today's session. So if we haven't been able to answer any of your questions, or you would like to speak to either, myself or one of the team at PGC about expanding your business to the US, you can reach out to us via LinkedIn, or you can have a little look at the video at the end of this session, or please feel free to reach out to Chris or Keith directly on LinkedIn. Who'd be more than happy to pick up a conversation about doing business in Austin and any natural ways that they can support you in that journey. So Keith, Chris, thank you so much. Take care, and hopefully we'll see everyone back here next month for our next episode. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Amy.
Appreciate it, Amy.
Bye-bye.
Take care.